Welcome into the Saints Insider podcast for Tuesday, April the 23rd. Happy birthday, Mom. It is our last pre-draft show. I saw my mom this weekend and did not tell her happy birthday, son of the year, so I decided to slip it in there.
Well, so when is our birthday?
It's today.
Oh, it is
today.
Okay,
you were justified.
Yeah.
No early birthdays.
So, okay. Well, it's her birthday, and it is draft day, our last draft day, mock draft day. We're going to go through our mock draft. Jeff Duncan's not here, but I'll sit in for Jeff. Scary thought.
Very scary. You have a weird-shaped torso?
Does Jeff have a weird-shaped torso?
He's complained about it on this podcast.
Is that a thing?
He's complained about his own torso as weird-shaped.
I think I blocked that out.
That's probably a good idea.
These guys just came from Mickey Loomis' pre-draft press conference, so we're going to get into that. We're also going to go through. We did a mock draft where these guys took turns taking picks for the first 13 picks to get up to the Saints at number 14, and we decided who they will take. So it'll be our final draft thoughts. Want to remind you right at the top, we do have an NFL draft giveaway. Subscribe to the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel and comment on 2 videos. You're running out of time, but two videos between April 10th and April 25th, and you will be eligible for the giveaway packages that include some Saints Insider swag and some Jeff Duncan signed books, like that one. I think it's actually Bags to Riches.
Oh, well.
But that's another one, yeah. Bags to Riches and then his new Steve Gleason book.
And you can buy Peyton and Breeze, written by Jeff Duncan.
Both will be signed by Jeff Duncan, and you could even ask him for an inscription about his weird-shaped torso if you want to.
Yeah, he'll write something weird in there because he's just he's our lovable weirdo.
Yeah, that's right. Also want to remind you that this season's NFL draft coverage is brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Now at East Jefferson General Hospital, Tulane Doctors are bringing academic medicine to more patients in new communities. Look for the shield to know the future of medicine is here. Find your physician at TulaneDoctors.com or call 504-988-5000. We will have our live draft show Thursday night. Myself and Jim Derry will host. These guys will join from the Saints facility. Wilson Alexander, who covers LSU for The Advocate, is also going to join us a couple times and talk about the LSU draft pick. So whole first-round extravaganza. We'll be on the air at 6. We'll go until the first round's over, like probably 10:30, 11 o'clock. And obviously focus on the Saints and everything else that goes on. So with that being said, takeaways from Mickey Loomis' press conference, first of all, guys. These pre-draft press conferences are not usually revelatory. Did he say anything that would qualify us?
No. He was his typical cagey self. He dropped his usual line about how the least favorite thing he does as a general manager is sit there in front of us and answer questions. So I don't think there was anything revelatory or that we necessarily learned anything.
Was he chewing gum?
He was.
He made sure to note beforehand that he was not chewing gum. I think he heard the criticism there. Look. A lot of the same sort of topics we cover every draft cycle. A lot of questions about trades. Mickey kind of went back through and explained his process with how he views trades. He said he looks back at all the trade ups that he's done, of which there's been many. They haven't traded back in the draft since 2007. I think we're working on something like 25 consecutive draft day trades have been to move up. And he says he looks back at that history and he likes it, and he likes what he has out of it. I think you could probably quibble with a lot of the outcomes from that. Notably the Trevor Penning trade that left them without their own second-round pick this year. But that's kind of their MO. They find a guy they like and they go up and get him, or they feel like there's going to be a player they like at where they're picking and they stay put. They very rarely trade back. And Mickey kind of said today that the reason that usually is because he doesn't want to go back any more than 2 or 3 spots. If you have to go back 8 to 10 spots, you're going to be getting in their opinion, a much less valuable player. So, but I don't think we finished that 35-ish minute press conference and came away with any super new information about this team.
Yeah, I thought for him, he was pretty good. Like, as long as the quote's usable in a story, I'm happy. And there were some usable quotes in terms of if you're just writing, draft walk-ups and whatnot. But I think the other thing you didn't mention, the thing that was interesting was, first he was asked about whether he was confident Marshawn Lattimore was going to be on the roster next season. He said, yeah. And then it was followed up asking, all right, are you saying this because you're actually confident or because you don't want to answer the question? And he was like, well, I'm trying to avoid it. And then he basically said anyone's tradable for the right price. There's too many variables right now to really provide an answer. And even if he did have an answer, he wasn't going to tell us. So I think Marshon Lattimore's future with this team is still very up in the air, but he did not provide much clarity regarding that.
And it was good he cleared it up because
Yes. Oh, no. I mean, we would have had the right
You're right.
for sure that Mickey
like
Loomis
Marshawn,
is-
yeah, Mickey Loomis
so
confirms that
we're still
Lattimore
writing
will be
it,
here.
but we'll provide more context
Right.
as we do here.
PSA. Yeah, I mean, if Marshon Lattimore is going to be traded for salary cap reasons, it would be post June 1st, correct?
Well, I mean, variables within that too. You know, they could trade him Friday for a day 2 pick if a team wants to pick up some of the cap hit, right? It's possible.
Sure.
But it just feels unlikely at this point that it would happen during or before the draft.
A team would have to make it worth their while to trade him to absorb. Like, even if they didn't pick up any of the tab, they would have to make it worth it. So the Saints would be willing to have that $31 million dead hit or so. But you look at the cornerback market around and what other cornerbacks have gone for, no team's actually going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the Saints could obviously use more picks, but if you trade Lattimore, you're creating another hole as well. And so now you need a corner in the draft most likely, and I don't know where that gets you. So
Yeah, but I think that's one like, look, I think Marshon Lattimore's a phenomenal player. I think the Saints, if they feel like they can get him to play at the level he's capable of, I think they should hang on to him. But they also have, I think, 2 really good young players behind them in Paulson Adebo and Alontae Taylor. And Paulson Adebo's entering a contract year, but I think both of those players are better suited for playing on the outside where Marshon Lattimore currently plays. So I do think that there's an opportunity there if the Saints want to take it, where they're like, okay, we have 2 pretty good players out there. Yes, we would need to add another corner. I think they need to add one anyways. But then you could look at adding a slot corner or a slot safety, and you can make up for that deficit there without having to kind of force your hand and picking one with the pick you get for Lattimore.
Sure. Rod, these pre-draft press conferences, I mean, obviously they don't even know who's going to be there when they pick, and they're not going to tell you even if they did. But did you walk away with a different impression of what the Saints may do than you walked in with?
I wouldn't say a different impression, but I probably will say, and I'm still going to stick with them drafting a tackle, but, he did, because my thing has been, they got to win right now. And he did sort of talk about the balance of win right now or look at the future for this franchise. So if there was some, I'm just going to use, if there was some tight end that they might really want, maybe they would.
Some tight end
maybe from Georgia. Or, yeah.
Maybe
Initials
there's
BV,
some
yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I think leaving, I kind of felt like maybe they would, wait and get a tackle later or do something different. But, and I'm saying all that, I still think they'll get a tackle. But he did sort of just talk about that balance of now versus the future of the franchise, because on this podcast, I've kind of talked about how I think they have to be all in and get this tackle right now. And I was saying it kind of for Dennis Allen's future. I felt like they needed to do that right now. And so just a balancing of that.
Does that mean that you think it's possible if the right opportunity presents itself, they'll trade next year's first-round pick to move up a few spots? I mean, is that on the table?
For me, it's probably still not on the table. I still think
I don't think it's a good
the need
idea,
of tackle is
but,
just too glaring. But just the fact that he sort of said that just made me at least think about it a little bit more than I have been.
Yeah.
I don't think they would trade next year's one. I mean, like, there's a scenario definitely where that exists where, but like I think if they're doing that, they're getting back like a 2 or something like that. Like trade, this year's one and next year's one to move up to 9.
Yeah.
And then get a 2 back next year. So I think that's more realistic when you're talking about another one.
A realistic chance they're picking in the top 10 next year, so I don't think you want to trade that pick.
Exactly. Well, yes, especially not like, Mickey was kind of gaming out like how his trade process works. He's like, oh, I've kind of looked up to number 8. I'm like, well, thinking about who owns number 8. It's like, man, how angry would everybody be if they traded like next year's one to the Atlanta Falcons, who currently own number 8.
And then get swept by the Falcons and end up being a top 10. We won't.
I think, interestingly, one of the things that he did say, and I actually believe him on this, is that he does think that there are going to be a lot of really good options there at 14. Like, this might not be a draft where they feel compelled to move up, because and this is something we've talked about a lot, and something we're going to get to in this mock draft is probably going to be 4 quarterbacks and 3 receivers taken in that top 10. It's going to push a good player at probably a position the Saints value really highly and need a lot right now to them at number 14.
Yeah, I think the only thing, like, if they did want to move up, it would be if the tackle run started earlier than expected. You feel like you were to jump into that mix. You're not necessarily – this isn't the year where you trade up for Joe Alt, because I think the difference, at least talking to a couple of draft experts this week, they don't believe the difference between Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu, for instance, is that, like, big where you feel like you would have to make a splash and go up and get Alt. So I think they'd be perfectly fine at 14. But that's the thing, is if these teams start taking a tackle, like let's say the Chargers at 5, and they get it where it goes 5, 7, 8, 9, they all pick tackles. Well, then you might want to jump into that. But just given the Saints and their lack of resources, I don't think it makes a ton of sense for them.
The one thing I've been thinking about is, we've kind of like consistently all said, like, Joe Alt's going to be the first one gone. I think it's going to be fascinating and we see this all the time, is if, these kind of chalk rankings just get blown up, and, the Titans are the first team that takes a tackle and they take Fashanu 7.
Right.
And then Joe Alt's still on the board. Then I think things get really interesting, because I think that's, we've all just kind of like said, like, oh, this is obvious. Like, Titans need a tackle. Joe Alt's the best tackle. They're going to take Joe Alt. But if he slips past number 7 and they take a different tackle, Fashanu or J.C. Latham or Fuaga, like, I think then it gets interesting. I think if you're the Saints, you have to think, okay, like, maybe we do need to make a move up. I think it's not a completely unrealistic possibility.
Yeah, I've said this before. One of the reasons people love the NFL draft is because it's so unpredictable, and what we think is going to happen could be turned on its head within 5 picks, and then you have to rethink on the fly what could happen. So that's a good way to segue into our mock draft. And the process here was these 3 guys plus Jeff Duncan had a Google Doc, and it was just, okay, we assigned teams to each one. Matt, you were the Chicago Bears at number 1 and number 9. Luke, you were
which was the shocker, by the way.
You were the Washington Commanders at number 2. We did that intentionally. We didn't want any
but we do have
past
to reference.
histories.
We do have to reference for the Saints Insider listeners who don't know. Matt used to cover the Commanders.
We really need a bell.
I don't know if
just
we've
ring
ever
every time we mention.
I don't know if we've ever mentioned this, but Matt used to cover the Commanders. He knows a lot about the Commanders. Matt, which team did you cover?
The DePaul Blue Demons.
Oh.
That was before, sure. Okay, so we allowed trades. These picks could be traded. The guys could negotiate with each other, and then we once we got through 13 picks, we got to the Saints. Then all 4 of them said who they would pick in that scenario. So let's run it down. Let's see what happened. On the clock, the Chicago Bears at number 1 and Matthew Paris.
Gonna go chalk here, and Caleb Williams from USC, quarterback. That's been so set for months that the Chicago Tribune interviewed Ryan Poles recently about Caleb Williams. He went on the record and, like, they had this really great feature about Caleb Williams and his, like, adversity. And Ryan Poles is just, like, quoted throughout that story, like, oh yeah, what he went through last year. I'm like, they got this. Like, could you imagine Mickey doing that?
No.
Matt, I appreciate you not using your whole 15 minutes to make that pick.
Yes.
Yeah, as the Bears
will.
inevitably will on draft night.
I think the most hilarious possible outcome is if Ryan Poles spent all that time talking about Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. Like, smokescreen, ultimate smokescreen.
That'd be funny.
John Tay Porter has money on Jaden Daniels at number 1. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, man.
Yeah, so Caleb Williams, I saw something today that beware of Caleb Williams. He freelances and has this attitude like he controls everything like Russell Wilson. I don't know if I would take Russell Wilson won a Super Bowl and should have won 2 Super Bowls. I think the Bears would take that outcome.
This is like I know the NFL has to own the calendar 11 out of the 12 months a year, and they're just fine with letting July be what it is. But I mean, good God, can we please have the draft in like late March? and just like don't give people the time to come up with these like just ridiculous the time or you know for teams to just start leaking stuff about prospects so that people feel compelled to write about so and so's character issues. It's so God, it's so tiring.
I saw on Twitter that a former scout anonymously said that Caleb Williams reminds him of he's the prince of quarterbacks, and then someone replied, Caleb Williams on 39, and it was Prince doing the My Guitar Gently Weeps solo.
Game blouses. Yeah. All right. Caleb Williams is our number 1 pick to the Bears. On the clock at number 2, Luke Johnson for the Washington Commanders.
LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels, and this is not a homer pick for me, the LSU alumnus. I think that this is it has been pretty clearly trending toward Jaden Daniels for the last couple of weeks or so. For a long time there, it was kind of split between Drake May and Jaden Daniels, and there are still some people out there who kind of think that May is ultimately going to land there, but I think I feel pretty good about that one, and that being the direction they want to take. I think if you're a new organization, you see this opportunity to get this modern day NFL quarterback, somebody who's going to impact the game on multiple levels, somebody who's going to be able to play out of structure and in the structure. I just think that makes so much more sense than kind of taking a bit of a gamble on Drake May's traits, which really is what the team that's drafting him is going to do. I think the production, the college level wasn't quite there with Drake May, and you have to be like, okay, can we coach out some of his hero ball tendencies? Can we get him to use these great traits that he has, the size, the arm, and all that to play within an offense, right? I don't think you necessarily need to do that with Jaden Daniels. The thing that you really have to be concerned about him is whether he's going to hold up, which I imagine is probably a concern in Washington after the last time they took a quarterback second overall. But he's got all the traits to be like a superstar quarterback in the NFL as long as he can stay healthy. I think that would be a slam dunk pick for them.
If only we had someone who had some insight into the Washington franchise here to tell us what they might see in Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I think at least the beat writers that I still talk to, they are leaning toward Daniels. Now, I think J.J. McCarthy's another guy that it seems high for him, but I think he's still maybe on the board for them too. Daniels, the only thing that concerns me about him is the high sack rate that he took in college. That translates to the pros. Washington doesn't have the best offensive line right now. I get a little nervous given, we saw the same thing with Sam Howell last year. He took a ton of sacks and then got jumpy by the end of it. But I just think the upside, like you said, Luke, is just really too much to pass up. They hired Cliff Kingsbury to be their offense coordinator. You can debate whether that's a good hire or not. But given what Kingsbury likes to do, he had not a similar quarterback, but he had a mobile quarterback in Kyler Murray. Jaden Daniels, I think has a great arm. And they have some weapons to work with Terry McLaurin, who I think is a very underrated receiver, at least by NFL standards. So, yeah, I think Daniels is probably their guy.
All right. On the clock at number 3 with Williams and Daniels off the board. Still a couple quarterbacks out there, Rod Walker and the New England Patriots.
And I think the Patriots definitely go with the quarterback. You look at their roster now, they got Jacoby Brissett, Bailey Zapp, and Nathan Rourke. I mean, you're not going to win with those guys as your starter. So I think they go with the next best quarterback available, which is I think is Drake May, and I think he's the direction they go. And I just think it'll be the first time in the year that Trey Lance and Trevor Lawrence they went 1, 2, 3 in the draft with it.
And Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
That was 2021, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
But so it'll be starting this draft. I would think that's how it goes. 3 quarterbacks at the top of the board.
Drake May, to me, is interesting. He's kind of the forgotten man among these top quarterbacks. McCarthy's on the rise, and Williams is going to be number 1, and Daniels excites everyone and won the Heisman. And here's Drake May. How does Drake May fit in New England?
That's such a difficult question to answer just because their offense has just been in shambles the last couple of years. I know they got a new coaching staff there, but I mean, like they had Matt Patricia as their offensive coordinator, like a defensive coach.
Yeah.
it's really, and I've seen like a lot of people making this argument. I actually think there's some validity to it. It's that their offense is such a mess up there, both from a coaching standpoint, from what it's been in the last couple of years standpoint, and from the current talent on that unit. If you drop a rookie quarterback into that, like you were just asking for that guy to fail.
Yeah.
I think that would be a really tough situation for Drake May to go into. Then again, I mean, he could be so good that he lifts everybody else up. I don't know. I think I've seen like a lot of stuff about the Patriots talking about trading back out of that pick. I know they would, the Vikings would probably offer a pretty healthy compensation package there, where we're talking about like potentially 3 first rounders, the 2 they own this year plus next year's first. I'm sure the Broncos have been sniffing around. Raiders are always a wild card in the draft. I feel like that's a good spot to look for the first possible trade back in this draft. But if they do stay put, as they're doing in this scenario, I think Drake May has to be the choice, because it might be a disaster for him in year one. But if you can get the quarterback, and the quarterback is good, you can elevate everything else around it. I think he reminds me a lot of Justin Herbert a couple years back, like very similar type of player where they had so much hype around them, not a ton of help necessarily in college. Drake May's line this year was atrocious. He misses top receiver for a big chunk of the season. So maybe that's where the kind of stats weren't as big as they were for Herbert, and you see the stock kind of slip a little bit, and then you get him into the pros, and he's awesome. So I think there's a chance that he's the best quarterback in this draft, but I think it's a little bit more of a coin flip for him, from my opinion, than it is for the other two.
And I think he struggles in that division. I mean, the AFC East is going to be, I mean, you still got Buffalo, you got the Jets, and you got the Dolphins, who are a really good team.
Yeah.
So I do think it'll take him a while to really come around. But
I also think that's a situation where if he has to sit a year, they can do that no problem. Like, I think in Washington, given their quarterback instability, there would be more pressure for Daniels to play a little bit, or at least, like, I don't think Marcus Mariota, who they signed, like, he plays, you have him as your starter, he's going to get benched at some point. You could say the same thing about Jacoby Brissett, but I also think New England's situation right now is that offense is so bare that you're more comfortable sitting Drake May, letting him work out some of the kinks he has in his game, and letting him develop that way.
And by the way, adding another really high pick next year, most likely,
right,
in that scenario. So to help him. So that 3, 4, 5 range is really where I think we expect to see the first trade. The Vikings are the team you keep seeing mentioned. They need a quarterback. They've got 11. They've got enough ammo. They have 11 in 23.
Yep.
They have enough ammo to move into that top 5. So are they the team that does it? Well, number 4, Jeff Duncan was on the clock for the Arizona Cardinals, and he did not trade the pick. Did not even float it, I don't believe.
He did not.
And he went with Marvin Harrison Jr. for the Arizona Cardinals, the top receiver on the board, the top non-quarterback on the board. And Arizona, look, if they're not going to trade that pick, Rod, it makes all the sense in the world. Give Kyler Murray a WR1 to work with.
yeah, I mean, Marvin Harrison, he's been, people been talking about him since, 2 years ago, that this guy's going to be he was a guy that some people thought would be a number 1 pick when, And so they can't go wrong with him, I don't feel like. I mean, that's what they need, and they're going to get their guy.
You guys think the Cardinals trade that pick or they stay put?
It kind of feels like they're going to keep it. I mean, who knows? Teams might get like desperate and start throwing some really wild trade scenarios out there. I mean, like we saw last year with the Panthers. I mean, the Panthers gave up a lot to move up to number 1 and grab Bryce Young last year. And I think when you're talking about a team moving up for a quarterback, we talked to Mickey Loomis about this today, it changes the dynamics and the value of the trade. Teams know that that's more valuable if J.J. McCarthy's on the board and somebody really, really wants him. I think there's definitely a chance that gets moved. But it feels more and more likely like they're going to hang on to it. And Marvin Harrison Jr., in my opinion, even though I think there's a chance that Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors become like superstars of a different level, I feel like he's got to be like the safest pick in this draft. Like you just know that he's going to be a very, very, very good wide receiver right away as a rookie, and he's going to be like that for a long time.
I mean, some people think he's the best player in this draft, period.
Yeah.
Though what I think is interesting about Marvin Harrison, or we were talking about before about the orders of the tackles, I actually feel like wide receiver is the position that like you could rank any of those guys 1, 2, 3, and it's like it feels like there's more consensus. It's a dangerous word, but consensus with the tackles or the order of the tackles, even the quarterbacks to some extent, but the receivers, it really feels like depending on who you talk to or who you ask, like some people like Malik Neighbors better, Roman Dunze, like it. But I think Harrison, for the purposes of this exercise and for the Cardinals, that's probably the top pick for them.
Okay, so up next on the clock was the LA Chargers, which was, Matt, your pick. But this is where we did have our first trade after kind of chalky first 4 picks, our first wrinkle. Rod, you were representing the Minnesota Vikings, and y'all made a little deal.
Yeah, I think the terms of the fake trade were 11, 23, and a 2025 third-round pick. That's
to move up to number 5. Let's talk about it first from the Chargers' perspective. Why would they do that deal here?
Well, they have a huge hole at wide receiver, so it's not great for them. But you know, if you're Jim Harbaugh, you're starting over. They probably have a worse salary cap situation than the Saints. I mean, they've had to purge a lot of people this offseason. They kind of need to reset their building there. Jim Harbaugh at the owners' meetings made this huge stink about we've got to go all in on the offensive line. And, you know, they could pick Joe Alt there at number 5 if they want, but they already have a great left tackle in Rashawn Slater, so you're picking Joe Alt to be your right tackle. I don't know. It just maybe it makes sense to me to trade back, get more assets, load up that way, and then if you're the Vikings, spoilers, that they take a quarterback here, I think all parties would be happy.
Yeah, Rod, who did the Vikings give up their 2 first-rounders to come get?
My pick was J.J. McCarthy. We all know the Vikings. Kirk Cousins is now in Atlanta. They signed Sam Darnold to a 1-year deal, so that's not the direction they're going in. I feel like they just needed to. They have to have a quarterback, and J.J. McCarthy probably wouldn't be my pick, but because I'm just such a big Michael Penix fan, I know his draft stock isn't as high as I thought it would be after watching him in the Sugar Bowl. But so I just think J.J. McCarthy would be the guy they'll go after. I don't know if you take a chance on a guy like Penix without his injury history anyway. So J.J. McCarthy is my pick. I'm not sure if he's going. I don't think he's going to be a great NFL quarterback, but that's just.
It feels like if the Vikings do value Penix like you do, let's just say hypothetically they do, they could probably stay at 11 and have a pretty good chance that he'll be there at 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They might be able to get him at 23.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
It always seems like quarterbacks go higher than you think. These first-round guys.
Right. Well, but
Somebody
I think
gets
23
desperate.
is a lot higher than a lot of people have
Right.
Penix. So
Yeah.
some
He's
people
like
have
really
him like a
second.
third-round player.
Yeah.
They do go higher than you think, but like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of when's the last time like a guy like if you assign a day 2 grade to Penn, like when's the last time one of those guys was actually like drafted that high? Like I'm thinking of Will Levis last year. Everyone like you look at the betting markets, he was supposed to be the 2nd overall pick. He didn't go until what 32 or no
His second round.
second round pick 34.
Yeah. Lamar Jackson might be the last one
Yeah,
who was
and that was in 2018. So like, I
sort
mean,
of
maybe
a fringe.
I push back on that just a little.
All right. Well, Penix is not going to be the pick at 5.
No,
certainly.
no,
If they-
no,
if they're
right,
gonna-
right.
If they're going to move up, it's probably going to be from McCarthy. So that's the pick. Up next at number 6, and this is Luke's pick. He swears he's not a homer, but for the New York Giants, you
Wow,
select-
I did
Two
go 2
LSU
for 2.
guys.
Wow, didn't I? Yeah, I took Malik Neighbors there. I think that one just makes a lot of sense. The reasoning I gave in the mock draft was a little tongue in cheek. They did kind of start this great run of success in the NFL for former LSU wide receivers. Odell Beckham was kind of at the forefront of that. He turned into a superstar in New York, and I just feel like there's a need there on that roster for a playmaking wide receiver, and that could be either Odunze or Neighbors. But for me specifically, I just think that his style of play fits really well there in Brian Dable's offense. Get a guy who can catch the ball and just zoom through a defense. I think he'd be a great fit there. And obviously there's kind of like some smoke around the Giants as like a potential landing spot for JJ McCarthy if he makes it past number 5 or number 4. Be it whoever trades up for that spot. But man, I think Neighbors makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Daniel Jones fan in the world, but they did make the playoffs with the guy just 2 years ago, the last time he was healthy for a full season. It's not like you can't win with Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones is the greatest quarterback I've ever seen when facing Washington. He was lights out.
He had a great game against the Saints a couple years ago too. But like, I'm kind of with Rod on this. I'm not really sold on JJ McCarthy. I know there's really a good chance he's going to go in the top 5 because he plays quarterback. But like, I don't see it. I heard him compared the other day to Andy Dalton, and that feels about right. Like he's probably going to be a good quarterback, but like I feel like if you're drafting one in the top 5 of the draft, you were hoping he's going to be a great quarterback. And maybe he just didn't get a lot of chances to prove it at Michigan, but I have a hard time seeing great quarterback out of him.
No,
I could definitely see the traits in the other 3 that we talked about, but like I'm hard pressed to see that. And I think that if you look at Neighbors or Adunze or Marvin Harrison Jr. or a couple other players in this draft, I think you could see potential for greatness there. Guys who are going to be making $30 million a year 5 years from now. So I have a harder time seeing that with McCarthy.
Yeah, it's he'll never have the talent disparity that he had at Michigan in the NFL, where he had clearly better players at almost every position around him.
But he's also going to be asked to do more at the NFL level.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things where you can say like, okay, well, they didn't ask him to do a whole lot, but you can see when they did ask him to do stuff, he did great things. But he just feels like a guy who's going to have a long career, but not a spectacular career.
Watching the Saints Insider final mock draft on the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel and leave 2 comments between April 10th and 25th to be eligible for our draft giveaway. Tell your friends about us, too. We will have a live NFL draft show on Thursday night. Moving on with our mock, Rod Walker back on the clock with the Tennessee Titans, who kind of like the Saints have this obvious need, and they're in a spot where they can fill it. So who do the Titans take?
Yeah, they gave up 61 sacks last season, which is almost 4 sacks a game. So I think they have to get an offensive lineman. If you have to get a tackle, I think they get Joe Alt. I mean, he's the guy that most people have as the the best tackle in this draft class, and I think they have to go in that direction. I do think they could use a receiver, but I just think
they signed Calvin Ridley, right?
Yeah. They did get Calvin Ridley.
I mean, you could still probably
could always use
receiver,
depth, but I just think the need at line is.
Yeah, for me, and that was probably out of the 3 picks I had, I think this was probably the easiest one. I just felt like it's kind of about as easy as the Saints picked it out. Tell you.
He's going to the Titans in probably about like 95% of that mock drafts out there.
Which is always kind of a scary, like, if everyone thinks this is going to happen, it's the NFL draft, maybe it's not.
Yeah, but then we were talking about, I was talking to somebody about this earlier today, the 2021 draft for the Saints. It's like every beat writer had them taking Chris Olave and Trevor Penning, unless somebody was just trying to do something different like I did and say like Kenny Pickett. But like sometimes the need in the player alignment is so obvious that that's just what it ends up being.
Yeah. So this is probably also the time of the night when the Saints' ears have to perk up a little bit and say, okay, tackles are going to start to come off the board. People are going to start to try to trade into these spots, but they certainly wouldn't be surprised by Tennessee taking Alt here.
No. I think this is where the tackle run starts.
All right, so moving on to number 8, does the tackle run continue? Jeff Duncan was the Atlanta Falcons. Say what you will, Saints fans, about that. But and this is really kind of an inflection point. The Falcons could do any number of things. They could trade this pick. They could go defense. They could take the first team to take defense. Or they could do what Jeff has them doing, and that's going to wide receiver and getting Kirk Cousins another weapon. They take Rome Odunze, the Washington wide receiver. And all of a sudden you look up and that offense is kind of filled with pretty scary skill position players.
Yeah, I mean, if they add Rome Odunze to a list that includes Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson and Darnell Mooney even as a third receiver with Kirk Cousins as a trigger man and a pretty good offensive line. Yeah. Yeah, scary, especially with getting somebody from the McVay tree to call their plays. I think that'd be pretty tough to contend with.
Yeah, I mean, even Jeff's pick got me thinking, like, all right, what else could they do outside the box? Because I do like that pick for them. But what about like a Brock Bowers? I mean, you spend so much on Kyle Pitts, but you have 2 receiving tight ends that just kind of open up. Like,
I think Falcons fans would be pulling their hair out. Like
I mean,
another
probably,
tight end.
I mean, hopefully one of them hits in this case. But no, I like the pick. I mean, you see Dallas Turner mocked here all the time. They need a pass rusher. I think that's still like an obvious need for them. If they go on the defensive side of the ball, I wouldn't be surprised. But I like Jeff's outside the box. It was a very Jeff pick.
He doesn't like to conform, does he?
No.
Until number 14.
Yeah. All right. So just to recap what we have, Caleb Williams, number 1, followed by Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr. Chargers trade number 5 to the Vikings, who come up and take J.J. McCarthy. Then at number 6, the Giants take Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt to the Titans at 7, and now Roma Dunze to the Falcons at 8. Still all offensive players. We have the 4 quarterbacks and the 3 receivers everybody talks about, plus Joe Alt. That brings us back to number 9 and Matt Paris's Chicago Bears.
Yeah, so I did Dallas Turner from Alabama. Looked at Jared Verse here. I think Chicago needs another edge rusher. Just, they acquired Montez Sweat last year from Washington.
Okay.
Also, yeah, anyway. So
First game was in New Orleans.
He was very good. Yes, he was very good. I could see them going offensive tackle here. I actually think if we're worried about the collective we, but I guess if you're a Saints fan specifically, if you're worried about Olufushanu going earlier than expected, I think Chicago might be the spot. The more I think about it, just given that they played together in high school, they can maybe use another tackle or 2. Like it, I'm interested to see what Chicago. Like I noticed in Sam Farmer's Sam
Farmer.
from the Los Angeles Times, his mock draft, like with the beat writers, they had Talise Fuaga going there, so another tackle for them. They're an interesting spot, but I went defense here.
I do think Dallas Turner is kind of one of these guys who's hard to predict. He could be, somebody could jump up and get him. He's the kind of consensus top defensive player in the draft, or he could slide. And if the Bears don't take him, does he slide, all the way down to the teens?
I feel the same way about Jared Verse. Yeah, it's another guy.
Yeah, big range for where he could go.
All right, so going on to number 10, and this is Luke Johnson again for the. Instead of the Giants this time, it is the New York Jets.
Brian
Thomas.
Thomas.
With LSU, no. I'm glad. Like I was gonna make that joke. I'm really glad that you guys made it before me.
It is not Brian Thomas.
I don't think they're gonna take Brian Thomas. I did consider a pass catcher here, and look, the Jets have a 40-year-old quarterback who played 5 snaps for him last year. They got to do everything they can to maximize him this year, right now. So I considered taking Georgia tight end Brock Bowers here because I think their pass catching options are kind of limited there outside of Garrett Wilson. And I guess they signed Mike Williams, but just who knows how much he's going to be able to play. But I ended up going with Oregon State's Talise Fuaga. They signed 2 tackles this offseason. I guess they signed one and traded for another. So they kind of shorted up there, but like, one of those tackles, Tyron Smith from the Cowboys is
always hurt.
Yeah, he's always hurt. And I think you're looking at those 2 options as kind of short stopgap solutions in a really important year for them. I think they have to be prepared for the event that Tyron Smith can't play, or if somebody else gets hurt. You don't want to put your quarterback in jeopardy. That's why I think Fuaga makes a lot of sense for them, because he can be a tackle of the future for them, but he can play 4 positions on the line. He can be a starter at either of the tackle or guard positions as needed. Maybe he earns one of those as a day 1 starter. He's on the inside, or then he flips out to tackle if you need him. But I think that pick makes a lot of sense for that spot in particular, more so than it would to take like a purely 1 position guy like Fashanu. So I think Fuaga makes a lot of sense there if it's not somebody like Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
And so that's 10 picks. Now we're within range of the Saints only. That is the second tackle off the board. So do we start to see that run on tackles? We now go back to the LA Chargers, who, again, traded down from number 5. This was the Vikings' original spot with Rod, but they traded the pick. So now at 11, it's the LA Chargers, Matt.
Yeah, I had J.C. Latham here from Alabama. Very interesting tackle prospect. Plays on the right side. Some people think he could hold up on the left. He said that he wants to hold up on, could play left at fast, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Just, big, bruising guy, very athletic, kind of sets that bulldozer tone that Jim Harbaugh was talking about with the offensive line, where they all work together. I think they'd be thrilled to have him, and he's a guy that if Shanu's not there, who would be the best backup in case option for the Saints? I think a lot of people would say Latham.
Yeah, he's my second favorite beyond Fashanu. I think he's going to be a really, really good player. There are, like you said, though, there are a few more questions about him. But I think in that sort of system where he's going to plug in at right tackle, I'm sure Harbaugh probably recruited him coming out of IMG Academy. So there's probably a level of relationship that's already there too. So I think that'd be a really good pick.
So that's J.C. Latham to the Chargers at 11. That puts Sean Payton's Denver Broncos on the clock. And this was the one spot, this is Jeff Duncan's pick, this was the one spot where he actually backtracked because was it Penix that he picked?
Yes.
Yeah. He originally picked Michael Penix here, which would be kind of a surprise to everyone. But this was just like an hour before the news broke that the Broncos traded for Zach Wilson. And so when they did that, Dunk went back and said, I'm going to change that pick because now that they have Zach Wilson in the fold, I don't know if Zach Wilson's your long-term starter. He maybe starts in 2024.
If they're hoping he's the long-term starter, then
Sean Payton thinks he's the quarterback whisperer of all time, if that's the case, which maybe he does, and maybe he is. But, Jeff did change the pick, and instead at number 12 in this mock, the Broncos take Brock Bowers, the Georgia tight end.
Yeah, which he made that change after we'd already made our Saints picks when, classic Duncan maneuver.
We all had to go scrambling, rewrite some stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I think Bowers is one of those guys who probably fits in a lot of different offenses. I mean, anybody who takes him is going to be excited about the potential there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We saw what Sean did with Jimmy Graham, so early in his career, the early Jimmy Graham days. So, if Bowers can become that kind of guy, then that's definitely a win for the Broncos to offset their loss with the new uniforms.
Wow. Going there, huh? Why didn't they just go back to the 90s uniforms? We talked about this yesterday.
Yeah, I mean,
go back to the horse, man.
Near perfect uniforms. I guess they added after the fact that they are going to wear those as like an alternate. Yeah, but that should just be their full-time set.
Majestic stallion rearing in the sun.
Yeah. Nothing was
Orange
wrong
Crush,
with those old uniforms. I like the update. I like the old helmet more and that blue, but I like their old uniform. Now old uniforms.
No, wrong.
Maybe it hasn't been talked enough, the Saints and Brock Bowers. Well, I know we joked about it early. Is this a guy, is he the one guy? I mean, he's not obviously the only guy, but he seems like the most realistic skill player to be there when the Saints pick who would actually tempt them over taking a tackle.
I think so. And that's what we were all talking about. When Jeff switched to Bowers, we were all talking about Bowers when we were making our Saints picks.
Did anyone actually take him?
Jeff did before switching.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We have to wait till the pick.
Yeah, we'll wait till well, obviously none of us took Bowers now.
But
he's gone. Yeah.
I mean, like you were saying, I mean, Bowers is probably going to be really good no matter where he goes. But if you get him in this Shanahan tree where they get the most juice out of guys who are good with the ball after the catch, he'd be awesome in that type of offense. Guy averaged almost 9 yards after the catch last year.
He was unstoppable for Georgia at times.
Yeah.
He got hurt for a little bit of the year, but he was the guy who, Auburn had him down early in the year, and there was one other game where Georgia was kind of messing around in a close game. And when push came to shove, he would catch 6 passes in one drive and get 5 yards after the catch on every single one of them. They'd all get 15 yards. And it's just and that's it's happening and you can't stop it.
It's a thing that I think you have to look at him differently than some of the the first round tight ends in years past, because I don't think he's a traditional tight end. I think he's like a supercharged version of Dalton Kincaid from last year. He's essentially a receiver who can give you some blocking, some inline blocking if you need it.
Yeah.
It's not going to be where he excels at all, but like, this is essentially drafting the number 4 receiver in this class is what it would be, what it would boil down to. And somebody who's going to create matchup problems for you. So, I mean, I would be super tempted, especially if there is this run on tackles like we're talking about, and you're talking about, do we take the 5th tackle or a guy who might make 5 Pro Bowls in the next 10 years?
Right.
And
we'll worry about tackle later. We'll figure it out.
Figure it out. I know that's not what anybody wants to hear right now about tackle, because it's such a huge glaring need. They might have needs at both tackle spots, but like there does come a point when you're talking about these first round picks where you're like, this guy's going to be a foundational piece for this franchise for a long time. I think you have to at least consider it if he's an option. In this case, he's not an option.
Which is good. I'm sure Mickey would be like, "Oh, I'm glad I don't have to make that decision."
I was just to tie it back to Mickey Loomis's presser today. He was talking a lot about exceptions, and I was actually kind of thinking of Bowers when he was talking, because, like you just referenced, the history of first round tight ends has been brutal recently. Kyle Pitts hasn't performed the way that people thought. TJ Hawkinson's a really nice player, but Detroit didn't get the value out of him.
Kincaid.
Well, Kincaid.
was solid.
He's been solid, yeah.
He's been solid, but I'm thinking of the other Detroit tight end before Hawkinson.
Ebron?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go back 20 years, I think there's only been like...
I think 2 players have gotten second contracts or something like that. Or
yeah,
one.
and like 3 players have gone to multiple pro... I think it's 20 tight ends drafted in the first round in the last 20 years, and 3 of those players have gone to multiple Pro Bowls. I think one was like Greg Olson, like another was like Mercedes Lewis, who never became like this like big pass catching tight end. But and then in the same vein, you can look at the 2 clear, obvious best tight ends in football right now are both mid-round picks. I think Kelsey was a 3rd rounder and Kittle was a 5th rounder.
But this, Brock Bowers might be the mold breaker. He's that good.
That's the thing. Yeah. The Kelseys and Kittles and Mark Andrews of the world have created a different type of tight end. And those players, frankly, Kelsey is more valuable than anybody else in that offense not named Patrick Mahomes. Like, he should be making $25-30 million a year. He should be making receiver money, because it's essentially the job he's playing.
Right.
Defenses scheme around him. Yeah, I think that if you can get anything even close to approximating what Kittle and Kelsey do for those 2 offenses in the Saints offense, like, he becomes as valuable as a number 1 wide receiver.
Sure. All right, number 13, Las Vegas Raiders. Each guy's made 3 picks now. Matt, you started first, so you get the honor of representing the Raiders. At number 13, which direction did you go right before the Saints pick here?
I think,
Well, we were all sweating this one out.
Yeah, I actually think if like someone like Fuaga or Latham are still on the board, they would go tackle, because I believe they lost their right tackle in free agency. Don't quote me on that, but that said, I went cornerback, Toledo's Quinyon Mitchell, guy who's been really compared to Marshawn Lattimore throughout this process. They have similar builds. Las Vegas is kind of starting over. They brought in a new coaching staff, new GM, or not a new coaching staff. They fired Josh McDaniels last year, but during the midway season. But anyway, they have a new GM. They're kind of resetting things. You get a top cornerback, which they don't really have right now. And so that leaves the Saints.
Is there a sigh of relief in the Saints war room if that happens?
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I just look at their left tackle situation. I think Colton Miller is a fine left tackle. He performed relatively well. He missed a few games last year, but I think if the Raiders, you're looking like, do you want Olu Fashanu to be your right tackle? He's more of a left. They have other needs. I don't worry about them with Fashanu as much, but if another tackle's on the board, I think they would consider it.
All right, so to recap what we have the 3 quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3, Williams, Daniels, May. Went wide receiver Harrison at number 4. Vikings come up and get J.J. McCarthy, another quarterback at number 5. Then you have Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt, kind of as expected. Falcons at number 8 go for Roma Dunze. Bears at number 9 take they take Dallas Turner. Excuse me. New York Jets take J.C. Latham at 10.
No,
they take Fuaga at 10. Sorry.
I was going to say, I was impressed until you stumbled.
Yeah.
Twice.
Then the Chargers, who traded back, take J.C. Latham at 11. At 12, it is the tight end Brock Bowers to the Broncos. And then at 13, Quinyon Mitchell to the Raiders. So the Saints, it would have been fun maybe to have a mock where things don't work out and Fashanu's gone.
I thought about it.
But he's there. Is anybody not taking Olu Fashanu for the Saints at number 14, or do we have the dreaded consensus here?
We have the dreaded consensus, yeah. I don't see what other, in this scenario, if this scenario were to play out exactly, I don't see what other direction they could take.
Right.
Like, who else? I don't think you take Troy Fatano or,
Fatano.
Too many Fs.
Yes.
I don't think you take Troy Fatano over him. I think Fashanu is clearly the better tackle prospect who's going to stay at tackle. Fatano could be a guard.
Could be a
the next
center.
level. Could be a center. I don't think you take Jared Verse over. Mickey Loomis even today was mentioning like pass rushes, like
The
not something they're
Atu
worried
would be
about.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's any other scenario you could go with this, which is why all of us ended up taking Fashanu. And I know he's been like the guy throughout. Maybe it's not fun to have 4 people all agreeing that he's the pick, but like I feel like the way this draft has been lining up, like if he's there, unless there's somebody like Brock Bowers there, or if one of those top 3 wide receivers somehow slides, I don't see how you can go any other direction.
Yeah, there's a lot of different scenarios that could happen, but if this is the one that happens, Rod, this is a don't overthink it situation.
Yeah, and kind of like what Luke said, I think for me, Brock Bowers is the only one that will make me even pause a little bit and say, maybe we should. Are we sure we're going to pass up on this guy? But other than that, I don't see how they don't go with tackle unless you feel like you can go get Andrews Pete for he's still a free agent. Maybe you say, okay, we got to work something out and we can put him at tackle, and you still got to worry about the other side. But yeah, I just think this is the way to go.
And to your point, like the guys who would tempt you if somehow Adunze or Neighbors fell or Bowers fell or I don't know that those rush ends or those edge rushers are really tempting you in this situation, Matt.
No, I don't think so. I mean, given Chase Young's uncertainty, you could make a case for it, but I mean, you have number 45 too. There are going to be some pass rushers, I think, there. Tackle over everything. I would honestly pick a tackle over Bowers, even if Fashanu was gone. For me personally,
I think one of you should have taken a pass rusher just so Jeff had to buy his mock drinks at Clancy's for
sure.
Yeah, to fulfill his no edge rushers in the first 2 rounds proclamation. All right, so that is our mock draft. We kind of ended up a little bit chalky with the player the Saints. I think we all think they'd be happy with landing to them at number 14. Any other takeaways from this mock? What did you guys learn from going through this?
I think there's going to be a realistic possibility that the Saints are really sweating out one of the best guys being there by the time they turn, or their turn comes up at 14, just because once you get past the quarterbacks and the receivers, the best players in this draft are tackles.
Mm-hmm. They'd be more comfortable if they were at 12 and 14, I think, for sure.
Yes, much more so. Because it's totally conceivable that the Raiders do take a tackle. It's totally conceivable that the Jets and the Chargers and the Titans all take tackles.
Even the Falcons could.
The Bears. Yeah.
Bears. I mean, it is totally possible that the 4 top tackles in this class are gone by the time they get there at 14. Now, if that does happen, that means somebody like Bowers is going to be pushed to them. But I mean, there's a scenario where Quinyon Mitchell doesn't get drafted, and then they're left with Troy Fatanu.
But one of the things Mickey said was, he feel like, at 14, he feel like they can get a good player.
Yeah.
And it just may not be the position that we've all been talking about, but they will get a good player, and I think it'll be a tackle. I think there are enough tackles in this draft that they can find someone to step in and start the first day.
And I think the juicy possibility that we're not talking about is if that run on tackles does start, and number 12 pick comes up and Sean Payton and the Saints start talking deals again. I think we got to be ready for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Or the other thing would be if that nightmare scenario unfolds where the Saints don't have the ammo to trade up or aren't willing to pay the price, and the tackles and Brock Bowers and everybody's all gone. That may be the one permutation of this where the Saints would consider just trading back and picking up an extra pick if everybody that they think is viable in that spot is gone.
Yeah, I just don't.
It's just not likely.
I just don't know. In that scenario where all the tackles are gone, all the receivers are gone, and Brock Bowers is gone,
All 4 quarterbacks.
Is
and
someone
the quarterbacks, like,
would someone move up to get an edge rusher?
Yeah, but like
Verse?
maybe like I don't know. You know, I don't know. It's like I feel like there's going to be a good chance Olu Fashion is going to be there, or J.C. Latham, or Fuaga, or Brock Bowers. But like there definitely is a scenario where all those guys are gone by 14, and then you're really just kind of left trying to figure out what to do from there.
Just so we don't end on the nightmare scenario, Matt, what were your takeaways from the draft?
Well, I mean, I do think there is a scenario where the tackle run actually unfolds like we had it, where it starts at 7, but it's really the teens spot. Like Mickey Loomis was talking about, well, if you trade back 1 or 2 spots, you could maybe get your player, but if you trade back 10 spots, you're likely to miss out. Like we didn't do the rest of the first round, but you know, you look at a team like the Seahawks at 16, they could use a tackle. The Cowboys, because they lost Tyron Smith, you know, the Eagles somewhere in there, maybe if they want to improve their offensive line or invest as they do in the offensive line. But so I actually think 14 is a nice sweet spot for them, because the way that this draft played out, you know, more times than not, I think they end up with a tackle.
All right, so that's our mock draft. That is our pre-draft coverage. Continue to read NOLA.com/Saints for everything else. We've got half a dozen prospect profiles up of guys the Saints are likely to take, in addition to a position preview for every position on the field outside of specialists. We didn't do, but I think we're confident saying they won't take a specialist.
No, I saw a mock the other day that had him taking a punter in the 4th round.
Okay, in the fifth round. Yeah, all right. But this is for the first round. We didn't. We did every position group. We also have interviews with draft experts. We're going to post the full version of this mock on NOLA.com tomorrow morning. We've also got Jeff did his own mock draft where I think he actually went a little crazier, as Jeff tends to do. That's posted now, so check that out.
Shocker.
Yeah. And share this video. Outside of the season, these are the biggest videos we'll do all year. So share them with the Saints fan in your life. Like, subscribe, and leave those comments to be eligible for our draft night giveaways. For Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, Matthew Paris, and our producer Norman Bell, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching the Saints Insider, and we'll see you for the live show Thursday night.
Happy birthday, Zach's mom.